at points as well, especially on the second half of the lap. It's got two pretty much 90-degree right-handers at the end of the lap, where track limits are always an issue here, and there's no gravel trap like we had at the Grand Prix, so it's just marked by some bollards, and drivers are going to have to be careful there, but they're going to have to be careful anyway because we've got a very wet track. And racing has been going on in this part of the world since the late 1950s, actually initially at Zeltweg on an old airfield, which is about 5 kilometres from here, and then the site moved and it changed over the years. The Oostenrijk ring then became the Red Bull ring. The circuit shortened over the years, and this wonderful venue that we have now is just over 4.3 kilometres long, 10 turns around the lap. And of course we're here for the penultimate weekend of the season with just a handful of points between the championship leaders. So Kelvin van der Linde arrives here with 170 points, 7 points clear of Mirko Bortolotti, and there are 112 points still up for grabs at the start of this weekend, including the points for the qualifying sessions and the races here, and then at Hockenheim in a few weeks' time for it's certainly going to be the championship decider. You've got Maro Engel having a super consistent season, his best yet in the DTM. He's not yet got a win like Mirko Bortolotti, but he has got lots of podiums. Mirko has got 5 podiums, and Maro has got 6, and he's only 15 points behind the championship leader Kelvin van der Linde, who unusually is the only driver in the top 3 that's yet to get a win this season. He's got 2 of them, 1 at the Lausitz-Ring and 1 at the Nürburgring, and he certainly likes the wet weather conditions. He's been flying in the wet this year with a new compound of Pirelli wet tyres that we've had for 2024, and that seems to very much suit Kelvin van der Linde in particular, and the Audi, the Abba Sportsline Audi, certainly has found something, unlocked something from those that new compound of wet tyres. It's only been used in GT racing in the DTM this year. Jack Aitken has had more wins than anybody ahead of him in the championship, with 3 now, including a great victory at the Saxon Ring and a pole position on the first day of our last event. So the Emil Frey Racing driver, the Brit, is 4th in the championship now on 120 points, 50 adrift. Thomas Preining, who's there, of course, in his home circuit, he's won here in the past in the wet 2 years ago. He is 5th in the championship for Manthey EMA, the reigning champion, 51 points adrift, and Sheldon van der Linde is 6th in the championship, 55 points adrift, and only 1 point clear of his teammate René Rast. And Luca Stolz was a winner last time out, first win for Mercedes for a year, and Luca up to 8th place in the standings now, 56 points adrift, as is Arjun Maini in 9th place. And then 10th is Ricardo Feller, who's had a difficult second half of the season, 77 points adrift. So mathematically, at the moment, you've still got 15 drivers in with a shout, although some of them in with a very thin shout. But right at the top of the championship, it is wide open. Say what they like, the drivers at the top of that championship table, but they are now definitely starting to think about the long game, the end game, the championship points. And when you get a weekend with mixed conditions, it's the sort of weekend you just want to survive and get through and get to Hockenheim still with a good chance of winning the championship. So it's going to be a testing weekend, this. As the cars leave the pit lane, the rain has actually started to increase and get a little bit heavier again. So we'll keep an eye on that. But we have got the session underway. So thanks for joining us. We are here at the circuit in the commentary box overlooking the start-finish line. We can see still down there 1 or 2 cars yet to leave, including both of the Abba Sportsline Audis. René Rast is yet to make a move. Lucas Stolz, I can see Maro Engel, and also stretching my neck looking further down. Engin Nguyen is yet to make his way out of the pit lane, but more than half of them have now left. And up here in the commentary box, it's me, Chris Hartley, and alongside me, so good morning to Brian Oliver. Brian, it's going to be a really interesting weekend, this. You've got to get through this and get to Hockenheim in with a shout. And there are some drivers, some teams, some manufacturers that traditionally go better around this track than others.
Yes, good morning, Chris. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I know a lot of people have been waiting around the world to watch this session. And at this, the penultimate round, yes, eyes very much on the championship, a track that tends to favour BMW historically. It'll be interesting to see how that goes in testing. Earlier on, a couple of weeks ago, BMWs were very, very rapid. Always go well here, but of course the weather conditions are throwing very much the curve ball, and it's turn 2, that's the hazardous corner, the one where aquaplaning can very easily take place in these conditions. You might wonder why the drivers are out here if we're expecting drier weather over the weekend. Well, I think tomorrow morning qualifying may well be in these conditions, so there'll be valuable data to be gathered in these wet conditions. So the drivers are out here gathering what information they can, but very, very important to keep it out the barriers and keep it on the track.
Yeah, we've had mixed conditions over the last couple of years as well. As I said, Thomas Preining won in a Porsche 2 years ago in his home circuit, and then last year on a track that started wet and went to a dry track, a drying track by the end of the race. Kelvin van der Linde won, but the Audis struggled on the Sunday when it was dry. BMWs, they reckon, are very strong around here, but you look at the results from just the GT3 era of the DTM. If you go back to 2021, wins, 3 wins for Ferraris and 1 each for Audi, BMW and Porsche. So they haven't exactly converted what people feel like might be an advantage for them into race wins. Podiums, Mercedes, well, they haven't won here since 2003, I think it is. Yeah, 2003. Wow. Marcel Fassler was the last Mercedes to win here at the Red Bull Ring. They have had the most podiums in the last 3 years, with 5. 3 for Ferrari, 3 for Audi, 3 for BMW, 3 for Porsche, and 1 for Lamborghini. So the stats don't necessarily back up the theory that the BMWs should go well here. I think part of that is because we have had the mixed weather, haven't always had the dry running. But the theory is, at this circuit, we are surrounded by mountains, but the circuit itself is quite high up. We're 670 metres above sea level, and that means the air is a little bit thinner than normal, and that the engines can't breathe quite as well, especially the naturally aspirated engines. So those with the turbos, the bi-turbo of the McLaren, the turbo-powered Ferraris and BMWs suffer less and are able to breathe the engines a bit better in these conditions, whereas the Audis, the Mercedes, the Lamborghinis might struggle a little bit more. That's the theory. Let's hear then from Thierry Vermeulen.
Okay, Thierry, also additional message. If you consider the track undrivable, please report to us because we are in touch with the race control.
Interesting that. So yeah, give us some feedback because, you know, we want to make sure it's safe. You're the guys out there having to do this. If you think it's not good, let us know. It has got heavier again, hasn't it, the rain, looking out the commentary box window, Brian?
Yes, it had stopped almost completely when we started this session, but it certainly is coming down very heavily here. And you can just see it's not only traction, it's visibility. You can see the big rooster tails of spray rising up into the air, looking down at turn 4 here, tiptoeing around. But the race control will be monitoring this very, very closely. This is what it actually looks like on board, and you're not actually following anybody. Rene Rast up towards turn 1, a slight uphill section in towards turn 1 here, and then it's the right-hand turn, but keeping his eyes absolutely glued to the track, fingertip driving here, just monitoring every slip and slide. This is the part of the track which is considered to be the most dangerous in the wet. This is turn 2. In dry conditions, taken absolutely flat, from what I can hear. Still taken absolutely flat up the hill towards turn 3, and then the heavy braking with Rene Rast.
Yeah, I was waiting for the lift as well, but Rene's like, no, I'm going to keep my foot buried, see what happens. So not too bad, but yeah, in the dry through there, when you get better traction coming out of turn 1, that left-hander, that kink at the Munster curve, he's 240 kilometres an hour, so he wouldn't have reached that speed because he would have had slower acceleration, less traction coming out of turn 1. It's uphill all the way as well, up from turn 1 to the top of the hill at turn 3, where you drop down to first gear and just 60 kilometres an hour. So very heavy braking at the top of the hill, and also therefore lots of good overtaking opportunities. The first half of the circuit rises, the second half of the circuit is a roller coaster downhill. You're watching Rene Rast, who's had 4 wins around this circuit in the DTM, more than any other driver, and has also got the qualifying lap record around here, which was set last year, and that was a 1:27.6. At the moment, Maro Engels, the quickest in this free practice session in the wet, a 1:39.4. So we are more or less 12 seconds a lap off the pace. That's how wet it is.
Oh. Yeah, so I'm just looking at how hard René Rast is weaving the wheel there. He's pushing the limits a little bit, isn't he? They need to look after that car. There was obviously a fair bit of damage for the Schubert Motorsport BMW Marco Wittmann at the Sachsenring, and René Rast might have had something to do with some of that as well. But really, they don't want to be starting on the back foot. The rain is absolutely chucking it down now, looking out the window. And I do wonder whether this is going to carry on. We've got track infringements at turn 1.
Not surprised. You try turning a car through turn 1 of these conditions.
Max Paul and Ricardo Feller. But yes, indeed, keeping it on the track. There's a skill. I can see Thomas Priding's already peeled off into the pit lane. I'm wondering whether he's called it a day or not.
Yeah, it always feels a bit harsh to give the track limits warnings in these conditions. Look, I was at Silverstone with the British Touring Car Championship last weekend. Very similar conditions to this at times. And they were pinging them for track limits. So I'll give them a break. They turn the wheel and nothing happens. And sure enough, the red flag comes out because it is now lashing it down. And that, looking out of our commentary box window, I'd say it's heavier than it was when they stopped the session in GT Masters a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, I think this was inevitable, really, wasn't it? Now, question is how quickly this will pass. I mean, it has not stopped raining all morning. It has decreased. I said it was spitting when this session started. That's about as light as it's been all day, but it's been pretty heavy all day. I know this afternoon, I mean, some forecasts are saying that it's due to dry up after about 2 p.m. this afternoon. Others are saying it's less likely. So we really are just trying to predict what's going on with not much success. But I think a red flag is the only wise decision. We have to think of safety here, especially at the moment in these conditions. And so cars now peeling off back into the pit lane, and we'll let you know if we get any more information.
Yeah, just have a quick look at my weather app and the weather radar, and which goes forward for about the next hour, hour and a half, and it will pass, but not until kind of 1:15, 1:30 this afternoon. That was the forecast that we heard this morning. It was going to be pretty bad up until about lunchtime. It would be less bad this afternoon. But on board with René Rast, and just kind of monitoring the display, the steering wheel, looking at a lot of wheel spin there. It's the aquaplaning is the issue. And of course, because we are such a steep circuit here, you get the channels of water running down downhill across the track, so all gathers up, and you get these streams running across the track, and we've seen some quite big streams coming down on the start finish line. It'd be worse at other parts of the circuit as well. So I think absolutely the right decision for now to stop the session with, what, 7.5 minutes run, 47.5 minutes still to go. And Maro Engel, 1:39.4, setting the best time ahead of Mirko Bortolotti, that you're looking at now, did a 1:39.8, 4 tenths behind. And only 38 thousandths behind him was Lucas Auer, Jack Aitken 4th, Thomas Priding 5th, René Rast, who we were watching, in 6th place. We didn't get any laps from either Nicky Tim or Clement Schmidt. They went out onto the circuit but never completed a full lap. There was a test here last Tuesday, which actually started wet. It was a private test. You're limited to 5 days per driver of testing. Some of them opting to come here. 12 of the DTM drivers were in action. It started wet, but it dried up as the day went on.
Time, or is it still counting?
Mirko Bortolotti into the pits. And the number 60.
Just take it easy, Mirko, when you're parking. Just take it easy.
Yeah, I would. Take it easy.
Copy that. 2-1 line. Pit lane.
So Mirko in, gloves coming off as well. Just a message for from Pereira on the timing screen to say that he's got to check his marshalling system, his light system is working. So it's part of the reason they come in and out a little bit, even in better weather circumstances. In the first free practice session, they're just testing a lot of the systems and technicalities on the car, even things like the team radio, make sure everything is working. So there you can see from that picture just how bad it is, the weather here, and there's a lot of surface water, an awful lot of spray coming from the back of the cars. But yeah, that test Tuesday before last started wet, but then it became dry, and 12 of them took part in it. Some of them saving up their test days for pre-Hockenheim, for the pre-championship decided next month, including both of the Sportsline Audi drivers, Kelvin van der Linde and Ricardo Feller. They weren't out in action, but most of the other contenders were. Sheldon van der Linde ended that test quickest with a 127.9, which was actually only 0.3 of a second off René Rast's qualifying lap record, so that was competitive. Thierry Vermeulen was second, René Rast third. From Pereira, who's standing in again this weekend for Christian Engelhardt. He still hasn't been able to get over this knee operation he had back in July. He was testing here as well, which was this, and therefore the suggestion he was probably going to race this weekend. So he is in from Pereira. Luca Engstler was fifth, and Marco Wittmann had a crash, quite a big crash, quite a lot of damage to the car a lap after he went out, and took some time to repair the car. He was fine, but a lot of damage to the BMW. However, they got it fixed. He went back out, did another 16 laps, and actually improved his time towards the end of the afternoon. So he was sixth quickest here, Marco Wittmann, in that test. But if you take out Sheldon van der Linde, when we're looking later on in the weekend, when it gets dry, Brian, he did a 127.9, but between the next 6 drivers, there was just over 1/10 of a second, so it's very tight, and that's kind of what you can expect around here when we do get dry conditions, which looks like we're going to get on Sunday. You can expect most of the field to be covered by less than a second.
It's always very tight here. Of course, the track is fairly short as well, with just 10 turns, and it is 4.3 kilometres around. But yes, it's always very, very tight. It's all about the thousandths. Just on the subject of Marco Wittmann, congratulations to him and his wife, the birth of their daughter, Lenny,
yes,
last week. And he had his first hypercar podium in the World Endurance Championship for BMW as well. So it was all around a good week. So following the crash, it went uphill significantly there. We're saying hello to our cameramen. They're a brave lot, aren't they? Out there in the rain, rather them than me in these conditions. Such a picturesque circuit, this. It's a wonderful place to be. No, yes. Well,
spare a thought for our camera ops have been out in this waiting to go. I mean, he's well covered there, but they're out all the way around trackside. Spare a thought for the marshals as well. The marshals have to be out in all conditions. Often not nice. It's never a medium, is it, for marshals? It's either too hot or too wet. There's nothing in the middle most weekends. So, yeah, they're out there. Marshall's keeping everybody safe, and our camera ops try to keep on top of things. Not the easiest conditions, as you'll appreciate.
The last time we all gathered together, it was at the Saxon Ring. We were wearing shorts and T-shirts at midnight. It was so hot. Cameramen didn't know what to do with themselves. They were cooking. It's kind of feels like a long time ago, the previous round, doesn't it, at Saxon Ring?
Yeah, and it's been pretty bad here for the last couple of weeks. It's really we flew into Vienna last night. It was really windy as well last night. It was a bit of a wobble on as we came into land, but it all ended quite well in the end. And it's been the same in the UK. It's been like this, really. We had about 3 nice days last week, and then the rest of it's been pretty wet like this. So it's been a very wet September. I think it's one of the wettest years that I can remember. I've been around for a while as well. More team radio now then from Thierry Vermeulen.
Can I jump out, you think, or you think it will be green quite soon again?
I will say that you can jump out, Thierry, because Jack is out and no messages, so we will not restart in short notice.
Yeah, interesting. So we're going to go or not.
I need a wee.
Contrary to that message, though, I mean, that's the problem. That's the water going across the track. It's still raining. It's less heavy than it was when they stopped the session, for sure. I mean, it's still going, and there's no cars on track to mop up the surface water. But that's the issue, because it's all coming down the hillside across the track, basically. So even if it lightens up the rain, it still takes a while for that to become less of an issue. And kind of visibility a bit of an issue as well, because very low cloud here in what's, as I say, quite a highly raised circuit as well in terms of how much above sea level we are.
I was here a couple of weeks ago for Porsche Carrera Cup Benelux, and conditions were very similar. We got halfway through race 1 and they had to abandon that race. And again, the issue was turn 2. Robin Knutson found that one out. Had a very big impact there. Pleased to say he's all okay. But just it shows how hazardous it is. And as you say, it's not just the water coming out of the sky straight onto the track. It's running off the mountains that are around here. They're doing their best to clear it, though, aren't they? And
could do with one of them in my kitchen. Get rid of the when I'm mopping up.
How wet is your kitchen?
And my wife always complains I put too much water down when I try and mop the floor. It's really clean, but you can't go down barefoot for about 2 hours after I've done the floors in the kitchen. So I could do one of those normally. I'm a bit keen with the cleaning.
This is the inside world of a motorsports commentator. Yes, you even have to mop the floor.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Animal cooking. Let's talk about balance of performance then.
Yeah, let's do that quick.
Let's balance things out with some balance of performance chat. Right, let's go down through the changes, because it's quite interesting the way it's worked this year. So the Audis, total weight, 1,305 kilograms. Now, that's no change from the Saxon Ring, and it's exactly the same weight that the Audis were here at the start of the weekend in 2023. However, they have got a bit more power available to them. There's restrictors placed on some of the cars, air restrictors, to restrict the airflow to the engines. The engines can't breathe as well, to even things out, the balance of performance, because you've got these different levels of car. The Audis, for example, 585 brake horsepower. The McLarens have got 720 brake horsepower, and they've got everything in between, the BMWs, Ferraris, Lambos, and Mercedes. So you have to even things out, different types of engine as well. The BMWs, Ferraris, 3-litre engine, turbo engines, normally aspirated V10 engines on the Lamborghinis, and the Audis, a V8 6.3-litre engine on the Mercedes. So balance of performance, changes to the weight, the boost on the turbo-powered cars, and the air restrictor to restrict the airflow to even things out. That changes track to track depending on the performance, the past historic performance of the cars, with things essentially being equalised. And it works because we've had, as ever, loads of different race winners, loads of different pole sitters this year. So the Audis have got 37mm restrictors on them. Now, last year, they had 36mm restrictors, so it's only a millimetre. It doesn't sound a lot, but it allows more air to be breathed in, and it's a little bit more power available to them. So they've got, in theory, a bit more power, the Audis, than they had here last year. It's also 0.5 millimetre bigger than it was at the Saxon Ring. BMWs are 35 kilograms heavier than they were at the Saxon Ring. You think, oh, blimey, that sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It's a huge amount when you're looking at hundreds of a second. That's it. Clean the lens.
Good job, that man.
Yeah, that's like painting the Forth Bridge in Scotland. By the time you finished it, it's all wet again. You've got to do it again. Yeah, the BMWs, 35 kilograms heavier than they were at the Saxon Ring. However, they are exactly the same weight as they were here last year. But they've got less boost pressure than they had here in 2023. So they've got same weight, a bit less power, a bit less boost pressure, which is up to, depending on the range, the mid-range, up to 0.12 bar less than the Saxon Ring. And so they were a little bit, I guess, disappointed with that BMW.
I have to say, when you talk about the BOP, you think, oh, they think, oh, they're a bit quick, we'll chuck a bit of weight on, or we'll change this restrictor plate or whatever. When you look at it, what is published by SRO, who do the BOP, you look at the complex equation. And there's this diagram which I couldn't even start to understand. This is not worked out on the back of a fag packet. This is proper science.
Think Albert Einstein.
Yeah.
Equations.
I mean, I don't understand any of it. And at the end of it, yes, we get the weight increases, decreases in kind of basic terms. But the way they reach that conclusion is really complex, and it is really well thought out. And
it's based on a lot of historical data as well, isn't it? So
yes.
They go back through all conditions. All,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. All credit to them. We know they do a great job, because how often have we seen the entire grid covered by less than a second? That shows it works when you look at the difference of cars that we have.
Yeah, but you never please everybody at the same time, of course. So every weekend somebody moans about it. That's how it works, because look how close it is in the championship. After the 6 weekends we've had so far, just 15 points between the top three in the championship. We get, of course, the 3 points for qualifying on pole in each of the 2 sessions across the course of the weekend, then the points for the top 15 in each of the races. So still 112 points up for grabs, including this weekend and the season finale at Hockenheim. And all of those top 10 mathematically still available, still able to win the championship. Jack Aitken up there, just could have done with a bit more consistency of results this year. He's had some bad luck as well. But finally, last time out at the Saxon Ring, he followed up a race 1 victory with a good solid performance and a 6th place finish. Could have been a bit higher, but 6th place finish in the second race at the Sachsenring, so he's right up there as well. Thomas Breining, of course, home circuit for the Austrian. He'll be hoping for great things. He certainly wouldn't mind a wet race tomorrow, and I think the same is true given how he's performed in the wet this year. You could say that for Kelvin van der Linde. So Florian Rinks, who used to be the race engineer for René Rast at Team Rosberg when they were both with Audi. These days he's with BMW with Schubert, and he's the technical director. And he said the BOP for the BMWs is, quote, somewhat less favourable compared to last year. So they were a bit disappointed with that. And Martin Tomczyk from Audi saying last year Kelvin won on a drying track. However, on Sunday when it was dry, we were absolutely nowhere. So it could be potentially a struggle, a weekend you just kind of want to get through as a driver of one of those Audis. Lamborghini we should talk about as well, because you've got Mirko Bortolotti right up there in the championship. Now the Audi weighs 1,305 kilograms, the BMW 1,330 this weekend, and in between them at 1,325 kilograms, the Lamborghinis, 5 kilograms lighter than they were at the Sachsenring. But they are also, interestingly, the Lamborghinis 15 kilograms lighter than they were at this event last year. Right, good news. We've just got a message on our timing screen from Race Control to say that the session will be resumed at 12:05, which is 2.5 minutes away. Saying that, the weather, the rain looks like it's picked up again. Let's hear from René Rast.
René, at the moment there's a bit less rain. Do you think it's worth to try?
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, copy.
That's the voice of a 3-time champion and 27-time race winner. Yeah, it's fine.
Bring it on.
Done this before. Remember, these guys, most of them have raced at the Nürburgring 24-hour and experienced weather worse than this. So, you know, they're used to these conditions. They're all very, very experienced drivers for the most part, anyway.
This is a summer's day for the Nürburgring 24, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not snowing or hailing, and you can kind of see the track. So, yeah, definitely beats most Nürburgring 24-hour race weekend weather forecast, doesn't it? So, yeah, the Lamborghinis are quite a bit lighter than they were last year. So interesting that. The Porsches are 10 kilograms lighter than they were at the Sachsenring. There's no change to their restrictors. Got 39.5 millimeter restrictors. Mercedes are the same weight as at the Sachsenring. But like the Audis, they've got slightly bigger air restrictors, so a bit more power available to them. So they're 36 millimeter restrictors on the Mercedes. It was 35 millimeters at the Sachsenring, and it was 34.5 at the Red Bull Ring last year. So 1.5 millimeters bigger. Again, tiny amounts, but it could make the difference. The Mercedes were all here testing last week, but of the 12 drivers, Arjun Maini, Lucas Auer, Maro Engel and Lukas Stoltz were the slowest 4, around, well, between 7 and tenths of a second and a second off the overall pace. And Maro Engel has said, look, the Red Bull Ring is a track where things have not been so easy for Mercedes in the past, so we want to see if we can just squeeze out a tenth or two and refine and improve our setup. So feels like a statement which kind of says damage limitation there from Maro Engel, who's a key championship contender. So just get out of this, get some points, get in the top 6 if you can a couple of times. If the weather helps, take advantage of that, which is a great leveler, of course, if we get some rain tomorrow. But it'll just, I think from Maro Engel's perspective, be a case of get through it, get some points and stay in touch going into Hockenheim, because we're not the strongest around here.
He's always there, though, isn't he, Maro Engel? You can never discount him as the cars once again pull out into the pit lane. Now, hopefully, we can get some running going here. I'm looking out the window. It is spitting, but it's not particularly heavy at the moment. I know that at Sachsenring, SSR Performance were a little bit grumpy about the BOP as well. And as Stefan Schlund was saying, we are fighting with blunt weapons. I think that was an expression that was used several times. I think Abt might have used that as well. In fact, Ricardo Feller on the Sunday night, he just put up on a black screen on Instagram, WTF is happening. I don't know what that means, but that was in relation to the performance at Sachsenring as well. But yes, the weather is the leveller, and suddenly the BOP has a much less of an effect when we're in these conditions. So cars back out on track once again. The clock starts ticking, and the rain has all but stopped. So let's see if we can get a bit more running in.
Yeah, kind of all in the same boat, though, if you pardon the expression. The front runners in the championship, in that none of them really are really looking forward to coming here, particularly because Kelvin van der Linde here last year, say on a drying track, it went well, but he then retired and he wasn't that competitive in the dry on the Sunday. He's a championship leader. Mirko Bortolotti, his best result here last year was a 9th place finish, and he was down the order in race 2. And Maro Engel, who's 3rd in the championship, got a 5th and a 12th here last year. So it could be that none of the championship contenders, if you look back at historical results over the last few years, are going to be up there fighting for wins and maybe not even podiums this weekend. So it could be kind of as you were going to Hockenheim.
Schon schön hier in Spielberg, oder? Schon schön.
Traumhaft. Hier schön diese Berge, das gute Wetter. No car coming from behind, mate. All good, all clear. Next car behind is our and Stoll's also exiting the pits. Next car ahead is your brother to entry turn 4 now.
Didn't get told off this weekend for being on the team radio.
He was very animated with his race engineer at Sachsenring, wasn't he? With Leon Wippersteg, his race engineer, long-time race engineer. Martin Chomchik said that a driver would never speak to an engineer like that unless they were best friends. So because there was quite heated discussion between the two of them. Particularly, we saw one shot of Kelvin walking back to the pits with his race engineer, and was very animated indeed about where they'd placed him out on the track during the session. But apparently that's a sign of a very good friendship. So when I start swearing at you later on, you'll know why.
So I'll take it as a compliment. So yeah, it felt like the first time at the Sachsenring where it looked a bit tense, didn't it, Kelvin van der Linde? It was, and understandably so. He's fighting for his first championship in the DTM. Been here before, of course, in 2021, where he went down to the very last weekend fighting for the championship with Liam Lawson, and it didn't go his way. We all know what happened at the Norris Ring, the season finale there. So he's been there before, and you're inevitably going to start thinking about it. And if you get into battles where I think he felt wherever he was on the track, people were kind of attacking him, and you get that tension of, no, if one of you just takes me out of the race here and I get a DNF, that could be my year over after all this hard work. So it's completely understandable that you get into that position. I suppose it beggars the question, when you get to the season finale at Hockenheim, on paper you go, well, you'd like to be the championship leader, but would you? If you're only a few points clear, would you want to be the championship leader with all the pressure on your shoulders? You're the one that can lose it, or would you want to be the drivers chasing you down with kind of nothing to lose?
Yes, throwing caution to the wind in a way. And you look at maybe the top 3 or 4 in the championship, and actually, you're right, a DNF is probably curtains in terms of the championship at this point in the season. And in conditions like this, a DNF is fairly, I won't say likely, but it's certainly a definite possibility. So it really is quite tense, isn't it, at this stage in the season, because 25 points lost potentially is massive when you've got 7 points separating first and second, 15 between first and third, then 50 points back to Jack Aitken in 4th place. So it is all about just keeping it all together, not losing your head and not letting the pressure get to you.
And that consistency tells, doesn't it, where it's those races where it's not going your way and you're not able to fight for a podium, but you still can pick up a 6th or a 7th or a 5th place finish. They're the points that really add up. That's what Thomas Preining has been great at this year. He's been there, and last year, and he won the championship last year. He's been able to win less races. He's only won 1 race this year. But he's had now 28 consecutive point-scoring finishes. He and Ricardo Feller were the drivers since the start of last year who had gone on this amazing run of point-scoring finishes, but it all came crashing down for Ricardo Feller. A really difficult weekend. Not only one non-point scoring finish, but he didn't get points in either of the races. So his run of 26 consecutive point-scoring finishes came to an end. But you have to go back to the very last race of the 2022 season, Hockenheim, that huge crash that Thomas Preining was involved with when he was fighting for the championship in his first season. That was the last time he didn't finish a race. That was the last time he didn't score a point in a race. And Thomas has said, we know how good we were here in the wet 2 years ago. Well, he's amongst the quickest. He was fastest until just now, because Arjun Maini has gone across the line and he's gone a little bit quicker. So Maini, 1:39.067, 2 tenths up on Thomas Preining, who's second with a 1:39.268. 28 thousandths behind him. Maro Engel 139.296 from earlier, the first part of the session. And Sheldon van der Linde has just improved up to 4th with a 1 minute 30.3 and an absolute best first sector on this lap for Mirko Bortolotti. The second sector, personal best through the first sector, absolute best through the second sector, and the last sector is a very good one as well. So Bortolotti now goes quickest of all, first driver into the 138s, 138.698. Still very wet out there, and the rain is still coming down though.
Yes, so 10 out of 10 for Bravery. I'd say 10 out of 10 also to the organisers just for getting this going, getting this track cleaned up and getting these cars out on track. Entertaining even in these conditions, especially in these conditions actually. Looking back from Thomas Preining, you can see how hard he is working behind the wheels still. So had that moment at the top, Mirko Bortolotti and Arjun Maini now pipping him. Maro Engel up there as well. And I expect some of these drivers, like the Mercedes pilots, would be quite happy if it's stayed wet for the rest of the weekend, because it does seem to level things out a little bit. Yeah,
most of the drivers setting personal best laps last time around. So that absolute best from Mirko Bortolotti, but an absolute best for first sector from René Rast, 24.551 seconds. The Red Bull Ring here, the lap divided into 3. The first sector basically just takes in turn 1 and the climb uphill through the kink at turn 2 before you get to the braking zone. The first real braking zone after turn 1 at turn 3. That sector 1 is fairly short. Sector 2 takes in turn 3 at the top of the hill and turns 4, 5 and 6 then. And then the final 3 right-handers at turns 8, 9, 10. They are sector 3. That's how the lap is divided up. 24.5 seconds for René Rast through that first sector. The second sector, though, is much longer. That's about 43 seconds through there. And then the third sector, somewhere in between, somewhere around about 30 seconds through that sector. So a good lap for René Rast. We've also got a very good start to the lap for his teammate, Sheldon van der Linde, who's just done the absolute best first sector as well. So they are looking to improve, and an improvement for Lucas Stoltz, who's just popped himself up to 4th place. And Sheldon van der Linde is up as well. One of the McLarens running wide there all the way through the gravel trap, finds the escape road. That's sensible driving, isn't it? All the way around the outside. I know there's a bit of time out there somewhere. It's going to be a long route. It's going to be a big old penalty, that. But the car gets back on the track and rejoins.
And across the grass, a little bit of rally cross there, but eventually making it onto the track. And I don't know which one of the McLarens that was, but there's this Thomas Preining also. Mirko Bortolotti on the team radio at the moment.
Go through the gravel. I need to go through the gravel. Can you check the traffic, please? I need to come back on track.
Yeah, there's one car coming right close to you. It's a BMW.
Exactly the same spot as the McLaren went off, I think.
I think it was Clemens Schmid who was the one that went off in McLaren. But everybody seems to have escaped that okay. Even Mirko Bortolotti struggling with these conditions. Yeah,
Clemens was 20 seconds off the pace in the middle sector, so it was Clemens Schmid in the McLaren that we saw going off the road. Currently 19th, teammate Bender in 20th place. Thierry Vermeulen has improved up to 6th place. Sheldon van der Linde, he started the lap well. He backed off a bit in the end. He still improved, but only up to 9th position. And we've got now Kelvin van der Linde with an absolute best in the second sector, taking the overall top spot in free practice. 138.597 puts him a 10th up on Mirko Bortolotti, who's bailed for the pits now after that run through the gravel trap to check the car over, presumably. Arjun Maini's down to 3rd, Maro Engel 4th, Thomas Preining 5th, and Lucas Auer has just improved up to 6th place. So having Mercedes don't like it that much in the dry around here. They do like it in the wet, because you've got 4 Mercedes in the top 7 places now. And Maro Engel improving up to 2nd place with a 138.695. You're right on board now with Maro Engel. Beautifully done. He's one of the smoothest drivers out there, and that's, Brian, exactly what you need to be in these conditions. Smooth and progressive on the throttle and on the brake and on the steering input. Any sharp movements on any of those areas and the car will snatch away from you.
Smooth and brave. Up the steep hill towards turn 3. It is a very steep climb, and up to the sharp right-hander. Heavy braking there. Past the penalty box and then back out again. You see Maro Engel with that purple indicating quickest in sector 1. So looking to challenge Kelvin van der Linde's 138.597. So The cars, on the whole, are getting quicker, but Mauro Engel just getting it a little bit late on the brakes, losing the traction in towards turn 4, but he keeps it out of the gravel trap, so all good at the moment. But I don't think this section is going to be purple.
No, just overshot there, so easy to do. You turn the steering wheel, you turn right for a right-hander, and it takes a while to react for the tyres to find any grip and dig in, so you have to turn in the wheel much earlier into the corners, and he just braked a little bit too late, and they just pushed on, didn't it, understeered into the corner, so completely missed the apex there. As Arjun Mining goes quickest of all, 138.371 seconds, and that's nearly 2/10 up on Kelvin van der Linde. Lucas Stoltz is up to third place with an improvement as well, 138.577, and yeah, Mauro Engel lost a couple of seconds to that middle sector, so the lap started well, but he eased off it then and stays out, and you see how much surface water there is there. It's still raining, nowhere near as heavy as it was, but it's still very difficult conditions out there as Rennie Rast comes back into the pits now. Thomas Preining takes his turn back at the top of the times with the 138.2. This is where he missed the apex. Tries to turn in, and when you're on the outside, he just got there in time, didn't he? Sometimes in the wet, actually the wider line can be grippier and better, but not that wide.
Yes, you do see some quite unusual lines in the wet, but yes, that's not the quickest one. Kelvin van der Linde continuing to respond as Thomas Preining at the top, the 138.2, but Kelvin van der Linde was purple in Sector 1, but Sector 2, 42.892, so it's quick, but not quicker enough. Well, actually not that far off the quickest time, so he could still jump to the top. He's into Sector 3 now. Kelvin van der Linde into the final part of the circuit, towards turn 10, the final corner. Needs to keep it very tight. There are some bollards marking track limits on the left-hand side. Bet they don't survive for the rest of the weekend. Out along the pit straight he comes. So Kelvin van der Linde, will he improve to P2, so remaining P2?
Yeah, and Jack Aitken improved as well. He did briefly go up to third place, but back down to fourth position now. Preining quickest with a 138.216. Kelvin van der Linde, that's his best lap of the session, 138.323, remains in second place. 138.371, less than half a tenth behind Kelvin van der Linde is Arjun Mining in third. The Ferrari of Jack Aitken, 138.519 in fourth place. Fourth in the session, fourth in the championship, Brian. We know the Ferraris have gone well here. Liam Lawson, 2 wins in a Ferrari, albeit a different Ferrari, different model of Ferrari and a different team, but that was in 2021. The Ferraris were a bit off the pace here last year, tail end of the points, tail end of the top 10 for Jack Aitken was as good as he and Thierry Vermeulen could manage. But the turbos, in theory, at least in the dry, should go well around here, the Ferraris, and if he can get another win this weekend and some more points, he is right in that title fight, isn't he, going into Hockenheim?
Yes, of course, he's the only driver this year to have won 3 races, and as you already mentioned, but for some poor results in between. But he certainly got it dialed in at Sachsenring, as did Thierry Vermeulen. Of course, he lost what was looking like a win because of a pit stop infringement that was entirely not his fault. He ended up coming in third place in the second race. So we know how quick that Ferrari is, and especially round here. But yes, a win for Jack Aitken would propel him right up into the championship hunt. It's certainly not all over, and he is on team radio.
Copy check, copy that. So P3, 3/10 to Preining, and we have 1/10, 3/10 and 1/10. And yes, let's box and make the change.
Slightly delayed transmission. That was after he briefly gone third. He was only third for about 10-15 seconds, and he dropped to fourth. He's dropped to fifth now because Mauro Engel, having had that moment at turn 4 on the previous lap, gathered it all nicely together on his most recent lap to do a personal best lap time, putting him up to fourth place ahead of Aitken, 138.496 seconds. Only just mine. He was 23 thousandths quicker than Aitken. You've got a tenth of a second between the top 2. But only 48 thousandths per second between second and third. There's only 23 thousandths between fourth and fifth, and 58 thousandths between Aitken in fifth and Stoltz in sixth place. Of course, it was the last race winner that we had in race 2 at the Sachsenring. And we've had 9 different winners now this season. As Brian said, the only one to win 3 has been Jack Aitken. Kelvin van der Linde has won 2. We've had 1 win each for Sheldon van der Linde, Rennie Rast and Marco Wittmann, the 3 BMW drivers. Thomas Preining's had a win. Luca Engstler had a maiden win. Nicky Tim had a maiden win at the Norris Ring, and Lucas Stoltz got his first race win of the season last time out. So 9 winners. We ended up last season with 12 different winners, which was the second most different winners in the history of the championship. And we've had 8 different pole sitters so far this year. And Jack has been dominating those qualifying sessions as well at times. He's had 4 poles more than anybody else so far this year.
So the points that can be picked up from pole will make the difference quite easily at the end of the season when everything is added up. Of course, 3 points for pole position, 2 for second, 1 for third. So qualifying very important as well, not just for track position. So it is that consistency that's required. Rene Rast, once again, look at the spray pouring off that BMW. Into the mist he goes, their headlights burning through the fog as they come in towards turn 9 and then out into turn 10. You'll see the 3 bollards once again on the exit of turn 10. That will indicate the track limits. You may well be asking, well, we watched a Formula 1 race here a few weeks ago and they had little gravel traps to indicate the edge of the track, and we didn't have the track limit issues. Unfortunately, they had to lift those gravel traps for the motorcycle racing that was taking place here, and financially it hasn't been viable to put them back down again, so we don't have the little gravel traps that we might have seen earlier in the season. It means that track limits are always an issue here. The bollards are a great indicator on the exit of turn 10. If the drivers go outside of those or over those, then they'll pick up a penalty.
That's right, you had these narrow strips of gravel, so if you went through them, you lost time, and that was your track limits penalty, losing time in the Grand Prix. The end of August was the MotoGP event. They can't have it with two-wheel racing. It's too dangerous to have the gravel traps. They prefer asphalt runoff areas, so they were only temporary anyway. The Formula 1, they were taken away, but apparently the cost of putting them back in is €50,000. Yeah. I've got a mate Bob who could do it a lot cheaper than that if they want to give me a call. But yeah, I mean, €50,000 is, to me and you, an awful lot of money. To Formula 1, it's change, isn't it?
So, cash.
And MotoGP have got a fair bit to get things removed as well. But for €50,000 for the ADAC and the DTM, it's an awful lot of money. So it's back to the old way of stay within the bollards. And yeah, I mean, traditionally, especially through the final turn at turn 10, 9 is pretty bad, but 10 is the worst. You get an awful lot of track limits and penalties. And in the conditions in the dry, I mean, there might be a bit more forgiving in the wet, but in the dry, you know, you never quite know what the grid is actually going to be because of all the penalties that are applied after qualifying, with drivers losing lap times in which they exceeded their track limits as Rene Rast goes through. We're talking about qualifying, Brian, and Jack Aitken. He scored 12 points now just from qualifying in the top 3. But the best qualifier this year, averaging 4th on the grid, he's only had 1 pole. That was the first weekend at Oschersleben. Has been Mirko Bortolotti. He's got 14 points now with 8 top 3 finishes in qualifying from the 12 qualifying sessions. So 14 points picked up. And as you say, that can make a massive difference at the end of the year when it's down to just a handful of points. That's more than a 4th place finish now, which you kind of got for free.
Yeah, and if you look at the points, if it hadn't been for those qualifying points, he would be down in 4th place in the championship at the moment. Yeah, it makes that much difference. So qualifying alone has gained him a couple of places in the championship. And it's a great incentive, isn't it, having those points on qualifying? Yeah,
I think so. And qualifying sessions have been super tight this year, as they always are, thousandths of a second between them. It's a track here, though, where you can overtake. Ricardo Feller kind of proved that last year. That was a drying track, conditions were changeable, but he went from the back of the field through to a podium finish on the drives of the year last year for Ricardo Feller, all the way up to 3rd place. He's only had a couple of 3rd place finishes this year. They both came in the first half of the season. And Ricardo Feller, who was, of course, one of the drivers fighting for the championship going into the last round at Hockenheim last year, is by his very high standards, a disappointing season this year. He's way down the championship table, given that his teammate Kelvin van der Linde is leading the championship. He's back in 10th place, and those 2 retirements, that double retirement at the Saxon Ring, really frustrated. But the pace hasn't been there. A few times in races he's been kind of up there at the start of the race, he's made good starts, and then the pace has just fallen away and got worse and worse. There's something going on there that haven't quite got the best from that side of the garage yet in 2024. But for the other side of the garage, obviously it's going great guns for Kelvin van der Linde.
Yes, a big contrast between the two of them. On board the yellow Mambo with Lucas Auer, he's got a nice bit of air conditioning going on inside the car, and you can see that he's tiptoeing his way around. So at the moment he's in 10th place at 139.027. He's just done a personal best in Sector 2, so looking to improve on that position at the moment, gathering very valuable data, and data that may well come into use, particularly in quali tomorrow morning, which may well be on a wet track. Out onto the pit straight he comes. So his last time across was a 139.027. That was his best, a 138.784. So that's an improvement for him. Moves him up to P9 in the yellow Mamba, continuing out on track. Just a little over 26.25 minutes remaining.
It's been a tricky year for Lucas Auer this year as well, hasn't it? 2 4th-place finishes. He hasn't had a podium since the Nürburgring in the middle of 2023, so more than a year ago now. He had a double podium there, a 2nd and a 3rd place finish, but it's only 2 years ago that he was the championship runner-up, so disappointing year for Lucas this year. He never gives in though, he's a proper fighter, and of course he's on his home venue as well, the Austrian driver, so I'll be looking to turn things around here if he can. The Mercedes, certainly the wet, looked like going well with Arjen Meiney 3rd, Maro Engel currently in 4th place, Lucas Stoltz, he's in 6th. Lucas Auer, who you're right on board with now, has just improved on his previous lap up into 9th place as well, just done a 24.6 through the 1st sector. Kelvin van der Linde is quickest through sectors 1 and 2 at the moment.
And this is not qualifying, huh? We're just, this is free practice. We're here to get the balance of the car, not to do pole position laps.
Amazing. What a great message.
Racing driver being told off for going too
fast. Slow down. HRT, Hout Racing, have actually got 6 cars here this weekend. They've got 4 of them in the GT Masters that are taking place this weekend. And Hubert Hout himself is driving one of them, which is a real treat for all of us. Oh. There's a fair bit of data to be gathered, a bit of data about the gravel track from René Rast as he goes wide out of the corner. He's able to rejoin. That's up at turn 4. Yeah, so he rejoins, drags a nice lot of gravel around as well. But yes, at HRT, with 6 cars here, 4 in GT Masters, 2 in DTM, are going to get a lot of data across the 2 series that will be shared, and great to have the boss driving as well.
Haast is on the gravel in front of you. Haast is on the gravel in front of you. Just be careful. He is rejoining.
See Maro Engel catching the wheel there, fighting it, snatching away with it. Lightning reactions, there he goes again, correcting the car every time. It wants to snap away from him, it wants to leave the circuit, and he's the only thing keeping it on the island at the moment, Maro Engel. So great to see that perspective on the onboard camera there, facing Maro Engel as he attacked the middle section. So he's obviously right behind René Rast, where Rast went off the road. Careful of him rejoining, because of course the issue is, you look in the mirrors as you're a driver rejoining, you can't see anything except for your own spray, and you won't necessarily know what's coming into the corner at speed. So René Rast comes into the pits now, there with a blower on, as you can see on the right leg of Lucas Auer is the Austrian driver. He's done a personal best at the start of this lap. That air being blown in, nothing to do with the fact it's hot in the cockpit, it'll be warm enough, but it's the fact they're trying to stop the cars from misting up, and the windscreen misting up as well.
Oh, that's gee, I didn't know that. That's very interesting stuff. I just thought his leg was shaking because he was nervous. Here we go, looking down on the bit straight.
So nervous, ever.
I'd be terrified of. That's why I'm not out there, and I'm not a very good driver. Right, looking down at turn 1. Oh, it's Luca Engel. We haven't seen much of him so far. We haven't spoken much about him. Always there or thereabouts, in 10th place at the moment, 138.999. Looking again at René Rast up on turn 4, just missing his braking point. There would have been a nice lot of gravel stuck to those tyres, and it would have dragged a whole load of it back out onto the track as well. Good that he made it onto the escape road. He says, never mind the escape road, I want to get back on the track, cross the grass, out he comes, and look at all that gravel.
Yeah.
That's what Maro Engel was going to have to deal with. Lucky he took a nice tight line into the corner and avoided it.
Yes, and then you run wide at the next corner, and you run wide onto all that gravel and mud, and it gets even trickier. It's a slightly downhill run, isn't it, into turn 4? That's not helping, because all the weight goes onto the front of the car, it transfers off the back of the car, and the back of the car becomes light, so even easier to get it wrong and understeer off the road, which we've seen a couple of times now. We said Lucas Auer started the lap well. He finished the lap well as well. So he's up to 7th now, 138.689. René Rast had set the absolute best first sector on that lap before he just pushed it a bit too much in the middle of the lap at turn 4. So he was on a proper push lap, but we'll never know what the time was going to be at the moment. He's lingering down in 15th place, a second off the pace, just ahead of Ricardo Feller, who's struggling in 14th place. And BMW's right down there, 15th, 17th and 18th. René Rast, Sheldon van der Linde and Marco Wittmann, both, all of them, a second or so off the pace. Here is Arjun Maini then, who thinks it's qualifying, apparently. On a charge.
Slow down.
Third quickest overall at the moment. His last lap was a 138.7, which was 0.4 slower than his best. So he's, just developing the car now on a slightly longer run. And comes into the pits and says, well, what's the point of being a racing driver if you don't go flat out everywhere?
Try telling a racing driver to slow down. So he peels off into the pits. That's a view, isn't it? I'm just looking out the window. It is chucking it down again, I'm afraid to say. How long have we got left in the session? We're at 21.25 minutes. So still a bit of time to go. It'd be nice if we get to the end on board with Mauro Engel. Quite a few drivers just staying out there for a fair amount of time. Lucas Stoltz has done 19 laps. Max Power's also done 19 laps. So he had also Arjun Maini. So they're the ones who've been out the most. Oh, and Thomas Preining at the top. He's done 19 as well.
Somebody that knows this place very well is Ayunjin Nguyen. Because at the test here a week and a half ago, he was the busiest driver. He did 147 laps around the Red Bull Ring. Oh, he could do it in his sleep now, couldn't he?
That is a lot of laps. You add that up, what's that in time? That's hours of driving. God, I bet he was knackered at the end of that one.
Yeah, 147 times a minute and a half, more or less. Give it that. So.
Because you want to
my long time. Yeah, calculator. We'll look at that for free practice too. Neither of us have studied maths at school for many years, and neither of us were very good in the first place. You taught Luca Rexler up to 7th place, so good effort from the Lamborghini driver. He comes into the pits at the end of that lap, so he's done a 138.651 now. Wet weather conditions normally spread things out in terms of the times, but we got less than half a second between the top 9 in the session, so it's still really tight out there, isn't it?
And a little over a second between the top 16, so you get the feeling they're all trying quite hard. On board with Mauro Engel, just staying out there as well. BMW, already mentioned, down in 15th, 17th and 18th. Whether they're just taking it easy, gathering data, keeping their cards close to their chest, delete as applicable, but I think they are not intending staying at that end of the points tables, the timing sheet, should I say.
Just thinking back to that message to Arjun Maini about, come on Arjun, it's not qualifying, you haven't got to go absolutely flat out. Was that the slightly nervous sound of an engineer thinking, you could easily go off the road here, it's very wet, I don't really fancy spending the afternoon rebuilding your car ready for free practice too.
Yeah, that's lunch break gone.
Bear in mind, isn't it? Because you've got to get through today as well, make sure the car's in one piece for tomorrow. And I don't suppose any of the teams fancy an all-nighter to get that done, to repair cars.
That's my contender for Team Radio of the Year, that one is. I think that's wonderful. There's Jack Aitken, tiptoeing around at the moment. So he's got a 5th place, 138.519. So that's about 0.3 off the quickest time by Thomas Preining, the 138.216. So Jack back out there again. The Emil Fry Racing cars as he goes very wide out of the corner. Great bit of drifting, the great bit of car control as well. But the Emil Fry cars often not very prolific in free practice in DTM. We often see them sitting in the garage just doing a handful of laps, but doing a lot more here in this session. But yeah, it was a bit of a Cope Brown moment for Jack Aitken there, although he'd just taken it all in his stride, wouldn't he, is what he does. So yeah, continuing on his way, no harm done, out to complete that lap.
And how unlucky was his teammate Thierry Vermeulen last time out the Saxon Ring. Pole position, brilliant, first ever pole, leading the race both before and after the pit stop. Safety car comes out, he gets them all back on his tail, he extends his advantage, but then gets ordered to go through the penalty box, not because of anything he did, but for just a few seconds. One of his race mechanics before the pit stop just took his hands off the one of the wheels, and you have to have at least one hand on the tyre, so it was just balanced kind of on his foot. The reason, we found out afterwards, because he was adjusting his glasses and just released the tyre, and it's then deemed to be out of control, and you're not allowed to do that, so he had to run through the penalty box. Thierry saying, the lap before I came in to serve that run through the penalty box was a qualifying lap. I gave it everything to try and build up enough of an advantage to at least try and stay in second place, but he couldn't do it. He re-emerged in third place, and then try as he might, he couldn't quite get back and back up any higher than that. So it was really bittersweet, wasn't it? Because it's his first ever podium. He was brilliant, but the win really should have been his, because he was deserving of the victory. But as they say, you win as a team and lose as a team, and everybody knows the rules. It's something that a few teams were doing at the start of last year that weren't familiar with that ruling, and it certainly, you would argue, cost Thomas Preining a race win in the opening weekend at Oschersleben last year. It didn't matter in the end because he still won the championship. But very frustrating for Thierry. That was a replay of how wide and drifting the back end of the car Jack Aitken went, but all beautifully controlled just about. But it's so easy to get it so wrong here. And of course, it changes every time you get to a corner. It's not what it was on the previous lap, with that rain still coming down and potentially drivers dragging mud and gravel back onto the track as well.
Yeah, so the pit stop issue, you have to feel so sorry for the mechanic who did cause that penalty for Thierry Vermeulen at Sachsenring. Apparently he was fairly inconsolable at the end of it. He knew what it been his fault and what had happened. But yeah, you feel for him. It's a silly, innocent mistake to make, but you've got to stick to the rules. You can't just let it go. There are rules there for a reason, for safety. You can't go, well, you know, he was all right on this particular occasion. It has to be applied. And as you say, it's a team sport. It's the driver, as they say, the nut holds onto the wheel, but it is a team sport. Hundreds of people, in some cases, working on the cars and providing the background support, and it's all about the team effort.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because you'd say, well, the wheel wasn't out of control. It's not like it was running on its own down the pit lane. It was going to cause damage, but the potential is there. That's the rule. Everybody knows it, and it's a very strictly enforced rule as well. So, yeah, it was a real shame. But we're all human. We all make mistakes. And the drivers make mistakes, you know. There'll be plenty of times where the team have gone, well, we gave you a car that could have won the race there, and you threw it off the road or made a mistake or whatever. So it's, yeah, I always say it's really easy to forget that it's a team sport, because you always concentrate on the drivers when we get to the race. But before you even ever get anywhere near the racetrack, never mind onto the racetrack for a race or a qualifying session, the amount of hours that go into putting these cars and go through every last washer and nut and bolt is meticulous and painstaking. Wide moment again for René Rast. That's about turn 3, goes past the penalty box. It's a little crest as you come out of turn 3, flattens out here, and then look, you go under the bridge and it begins to descend downhill into turn 4. The next corner, which is where he and Maro Engel have both had wide moments. Looks like he gets through it this time. Looks so laid back, doesn't he? The cockpit of the car, the 3-time champion, but there is an awful lot of focus. They're going to feel pretty drained after an hour of, or nearly an hour of driving around in these conditions.
Yeah, it's very taxing. I mean, I think he's just exploring where the traction is and how far it extends on the track, isn't it? I mean, it'll come into use later on in the weekend. But yes, not just the physical exertion, but mental as well. Yeah, just the concentration. We can have another look at this. Is up in towards turn 3. You can see him locking up, the back end sliding. Fortunately, a nice runoff area there, so he was able just to regather it. But yeah, no, the red stuff doesn't have any grip, I can confirm. So carry on towards turn 4.
Yeah, and going into this over 230, 240 kilometres an hour through the speed trap, which is just before that. I noticed when the speed trap times came up earlier, I think it was René Rast that was quickest off memory. He took 232 kilometres an hour, but in the dry they can do 240 plus through that kink through that turn.
It's not far off then, is it?
So I mean, it's 10 to 15 kilometres an hour down, and that's just about the traction coming out of turn 1, isn't it? So it's a fair old bit, and that happens coming out of every corner. And then you lose, well, at the moment, what's the best lap? 138.2. Qualifying lap records are 127.6. So you are 11.5 seconds, more or less a second per corner off the pace.
Yes, and if I was out there, it would be measured in hours, not minutes. That's why these drivers are the greatest in GT3 racing. There's the super sub from Pereira, having
not miss him.
He's said to Jordan Pepper, please you didn't do anything nasty in the seat because I'm having it back. And Christian Engelhardt continues to look on. We may well see Christian Engelhardt at Hockenheim. I understand that he's going to have a test in the car next week to see how he copes. I'm told that when you look at him, he's moving around absolutely fine, but he's still waiting for that injury to heal that we've spoken about already. But Frank Pereira saying, take your time, mate. I'm enjoying myself in this car, and he's having a really good time of it. He's had some good results, including a podium.
Yeah, Christian Engelhardt will be desperate to get back in the car for Hockenheim if he can, because remember he started the year as a Porsche driver last year. Got his first DTM win as a Porsche driver at Oschersleben with the Top Sport team. But he then, by the end of the season, he was driving for Grasser in the Lamborghini and got on the podium at Hockenheim 12 months ago, as we see another BMW going wide. This time Sheldon van der Linde, 2 wheels through the gravel trap. He's only just gone back out onto the circuit. At the moment, 4 of the top 5 are in the pit lane. Thomas Preining, Kelvin van der Linde, Maro Engel and Jack Aitken. The only driver that sets one of the top 5 times so far that is on track is Arjun Maini, who's 3rd quickest overall. He's just gone back out. We've been seeing lap times in and around the mid to high 1:39 as the best lap times lately. So it's been a while since anybody was in the 1:38s. They look like they're doing slightly longer runs. And the rain, looking out the window, stayed fairly consistent for the last sort of 15 or 20 minutes of the session. We talked about the Drivers' Championship, the other championships to be fought for this next 2 weekends as well. The Manufacturers' Championship is very tight. The top 2 drivers from each race, their points taken up for the manufacturer, and Mercedes are leading on 324 points, but they are only 20 points clear of Lamborghini, who've got 304, and then BMW are only 38 points behind 3rd, and 57 points behind are Audi, and there's still 180 points up for grabs.
I have no feedback because the track changed too much. It got too wet and this is not really comparable. At the end I was even getting a lot of aquaplaning on the straights already. So to be honest, I don't really have any proper feedback.
Yeah, can't compare like for like. It's, I say the rain has stayed constant. It's certainly not the heaviest it's been, not as heavy as just before they stopped the session at 7.5 minutes into the free practice session, but it's remained constant, and the conditions, Thomas Preining saying worsening, which reflected, as I say, the times. We've been in the mid 1:39s at best. Nobody's been into the low to mid 1:38s, which is what we were getting earlier on in the session. Although Andrew Guin has just improved his time to go 11th quickest, and he has got into the 1:38s, 1:38.856 for Andrew, to put him just ahead of Nicky Tim. And Lucas Auer has just set a personal best first sector with a 24.5 on that run up through turns 1, 2 and 3. And yeah, maybe it has just eased ever so slightly in the last minute or two, but not a lot.
Well, we've got just under 9.5 minutes remaining, and I have to say I'm really impressed. I wondered whether we were going to see many cars out on track at all. In fact, we've seen everybody out on track doing lots of laps despite these conditions, and hopefully we can keep it going for another 9 minutes. You can see some brightness on the horizon there as we head out towards the turn 1 once again, long past the pits. On board with Lucas Auer, continuing to gather the information in P6 at the moment.
Yeah, another improvement, personal best in sector 3 as well on that run through turns 7, 8, 9 and 10. That pretty much downhill run all the way at the end of the lap. There's Arjun Guin, who improved on the previous lap. He's 11th quickest overall, 11th, but only 0.6 of a second off the pace. There's turn 4. He makes the apex in the bright green Manthey EMA Porsche, the co-run team, joint German-Australian effort. EMA, the Australian part of the team, and Manthey, of course. Olaf Manthey, former DTM racer himself back in the day, a very experienced GT team, and coming back into DTM last year. And Arjun Guin, personal best through the first sector, which was a 24.7. We had a 24.5 personal best for Frank Pereira as well. He's going well. He's behind Arjun on the lap. Arjun was pretty good through this middle sector. He's only 0.3 down on the absolute best middle sector time. It's not his personal best, but it wasn't far off. So if he can hook it together through this last couple of corners, Hyde could be improving up into the top 10 here, maybe even up into the top 8. Let's see if he can hold it together. He goes through. He's just improved, and he has got up into the top 10 with that. 138.701 from Pereira. Waiting for him to come through the timing beam at the end of sector 2, but he's going well as well.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm just pounding around. I have no idea what I'm doing because I have no delta this time. So I don't know what to do. I think better to stop it to fix the issue.
Yeah, it's the second message that we've had of...
It's consistent.
What's the point of pounding around? It's I can't really give you any feedback. We're not learning anything here. Is the it's really the feedback that's come from Thomas Priding and from René Rast. There's another off there for Mirko Bortolotti in the Lamborghini, so he's trying to rejoin on track currently, which he'll do safely. So it's in the middle of the lap. That was coming out of turn 6, so just at the end of the second sector. There's a great shot, looking back at all that horsepower, 640 brake horsepower and not much grip. That is why these are the best GT3 drivers in the world.
Brilliant stuff. And despite the excursion, it's like, never mind about that, get the tyres cleaned up, carry on, do it all again. Yeah, interesting the message about from 2 drivers now. We're not really gathering much information as we see Mirko Bortolotti on that replay. That's the moment that he had. But yeah, there is that risk versus reward moment, isn't it? Is it worth just pounding around now? If you've got the information you need for wet weather, you're risking the car and the equipment. Would it be better to park it up? I saw Luca Engsler just marching off towards somewhere dry about 10 minutes ago, so I think he's probably had enough for the day. But there are still plenty of cars out on track, all bar 4 cars out on track at the moment. So there is still information to be had, clearly, and that's what it looked like from Mirko's perspective, heading out onto the gravel. The main bit is to keep it rolling, because the moment you get stationary on that gravel, that's when you're going nowhere, and the session has to be stopped.
And that actually, bizarrely, becomes a bit easier in the wet to get out of the gravel, because the rain compacts it. You see Mirko, oddly enough, tucked to the grass there. He'd gone all the way down the escape road, but then I think he saw Maro Engel coming in the mirrors and jumped out of the way back onto the grass.
Can you continue? We have 7 minutes to go.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want a big gap, you can let Max and Stolz go.
Yeah, so the gravel trap, I didn't know that. So it's similar to my cat's litter tray. It clumps together when it gets wet. I'm learning a lot this morning. This is very good.
It's a bit easier to get out of them, but it gets in the wet much easier to go into them in the first place. Hats off to the circuit designer here to have those little thin strips of escape road beyond the gravel trap.
Yeah,
you might have had a few session stoppages if it hadn't been for them, because they've been able to get back on track, haven't they?
No, lifesavers, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen 4 or 5 cars that have used escape road, haven't we? So, yeah, 10 out of 10 for design on that.
Arjun Miney just coming into his pit box, opposite the commentary box, just being jacked up there, and looks like he's going to end the session in the top 3. Still could go out now if he wanted to, but there's only 4.5 minutes left on the clock. Thomas Priding, we heard him saying that there's not really any feedback I can give you here, so I think he's called it a day. He's in the pits, but he's going to end the session quickest. And like with Jack Aitken, a win here this weekend for Thomas Priding, and maybe with the top 3 potentially struggling right in the championship fight as well. And don't rule him out. He's been stealth-like, just knocking up the points and getting the odd win, the odd podium, and he's still there or thereabouts, 5th in the championship. A lot of work to do. He's got to catch up this weekend, that's for sure, but he's got a chance still. In the team's championship, Schubert Motorsport lead the way on 273 points, but they're only 22 clear of Abt Sportsline. Now, bear in mind, 25 points for a win and 20 for second in a race. You could score 45 points in a race with your 2 cars, your best 2 cars, which is all you've got for most cases, but Schubert, of course, got 3 cars. You only count your best 2. So 22 points is not a lot between Schubert and Abt. And then third are Winward on 231, who've been the best pit stoppers this year, and SSR Performance run the Lamborghini of the man you're looking at, Mirko Bortolotti, and of Nicky Tim, they're 4th, 222 points, 51 points behind. There's 180 points still up for grabs in that championship. We go then to the final championship, which is the pit stop challenge, which does reflect teamwork here. The fastest 3 pit stops in each of the races are awarded points: 3 if you're fastest, 2 if you're second, and 1 if you're third. And Manthey, EMA and Winward are the 2 fighting over that championship. There's only 1 point between them with 4 races to go. 22 points for Manthey, 21 points for Winward, and Schubert are only 5 behind on 17 as well. So another sub-championship that can reward the teams at the end of the day. As we look at Ben Durr now, the rookie driver, the only rookie in the field this year, has been picking up points here and there, and Ben is on course for his best lap of the session so far, whereas his teammate Clement Schmidt has been fairly absent, hasn't he, in the second half of this session. He's only done, what, 14 laps?
Yeah.
Some of them have done 25 plus laps in this session.
I wonder if he's had a problem, because we haven't seen him for some time. He's been in the pits for the vast part of this session, so only 14 laps, as you say. So I wonder if there's a problem there. Clement's, of course, another of the local drivers. I saw how hard that Ben Durr was having to fight to keep the car pointing in the right direction. Really is tricky out there. We've got 2 minutes remaining of this, which has been a very entertaining, albeit fairly extended session. Free practice 1. We've got to do it all again this afternoon, when hopefully the rain will have passed by and we might actually see some dry running.
Love your optimism. Now that is what it's like to follow a car with the spray. From Marco Wittmann's perspective, behind front Pereira, can see absolutely nothing, and he got held up there as well, didn't he? Let's get radio.
What an idiot, this Lambo. He just came out of it and he does not move.
Yes, I saw that. It's Pereira.
So Marco Wittmann using the idiot word there. Drivers call each other idiots quite a lot in the DTM, don't they, when they're a bit annoyed. In mitigating circumstances, I was saying that in the argument of front Pereira, if you look in the mirrors, you probably can't see a lot, even though he was flashing the lights, even though it's a fairly bright green, that BMW. And that's if you actually want to look in the mirrors, because you probably want to look where you're going in these conditions. So it's not the easiest. We're on board with Lucas Auer. Now, he's the one that's been improving of late, and he's now gone quickest of all at the end of the session with a 1:38.133 second lap last time around, and that's 83 thousandths quicker than Thomas Preining. So rejoice, Austrians. You've got Austrians 1 and 2 at the start of the weekend, with Auer ahead of Preining.
And all of the Mercedes in the top 7 as well. So the naysayers about the Mercedes pace, well, certainly in the wet, looking very quick. So Lucas Auer, quickest of them. Arjun Maini, Maro Engel 4th and 5th, and Lucas Stoltz in 7th place.
Yeah, we saw the other Austrian, Clement Schmidt, going off the road, didn't we? Didn't look like he damaged the car, but maybe there was an issue which sent him off in the first place, because I think he's been back out since, has he? So 14 laps for him. But his teammate, Ben Durr, has done the joint most laps of anybody in the session with 30, so he's been picking up the data. Another absolute best lap for Lucas Auer. Not just 1, but 2 quick laps now, 1:38.051. And that's another 80-odd thousandths quicker than the one he did before. So he's now 0.16 seconds up as the checkered flag comes out. Mirko Bortolotti comes past the commentary box. He's the first to take the checkered flag, and he has a better lap as well. Moves up to 4th place with a 1:38.360. So even though the rain stayed fairly consistent, even though 1 or 2 drivers were saying, well, I'm not learning anything, the track's got slower, it's picked up again right at the end as they go for qualifying type runs. And Arjun Nguyen and Lucas Auer have both done personal best through their first sectors as well. Lucas, I think, is going to be pretty much one of the last ones home, isn't he, as Nguyen goes 9th at the end of the session.
Oh, it's been a really entertaining session, and Lucas Auer, he's been creeping up. He'd started at the bottom of the time screens and just kept jumping up every few minutes and finishes at the top. Can't see that anybody is going to beat that, the 1:38.051. Anybody who's on a lap at the moment, they'll be able to continue that and it will count. But once they've crossed the checkered flag line, then that's it. So, yes, Lucas Auer, 1:38.051, well ahead of Thomas Preining by about 1.5 tenths, or 0.165 to be more precise. Kelvin van der Linde in 3rd place, just keeping himself very much there as well. But we've done well. I did not think we were going to get 55 minutes of running in this session. I didn't think we were going to have 5 minutes of running in, if I'm brutally honest. So great job by everybody. A good FP1. Lots of information gathered. We're still none the wiser as to who's going to be quicker at the dry, though.
Not quite as quick on that lap in the end for Lucas Auer. 1:38.262, but it was still a very good lap, which in itself would have been quick enough to be second behind Thomas Preining. But the 2 laps prior to that were the 2 quickest laps of the session for Lucas Auer, 1:38.051. The brave Austrian. Be great to see him back on the podium this weekend. As I say, it's long overdue, with only a couple of 4th place finishes this season. So Lucas Auer starts the weekend well. He'll be one of several drivers, I suspect, Brian, doing a big old rain dance for the rest of the weekend because they'll feel they've got much better chance in wet weather conditions than in the dry. But there's confirmation of the order. Austria 1-2 for Lucas Auer and Thomas Preining, 1:38.051 seconds, the quickest lap in the wet free practice session. Kelvin van der Linde, fairly early on in the session, was 3rd quickest with his best time. Mirko Bortolotti's best lap came towards the end of the session as well, his last lap, with Arjun Maini in 5th, Maro Engel in 6th, Jack Aitken, the best of the Ferraris, in 7th, Lucas Stoltz in 8th place, Arjen Guwen with some late improvements to get up to 9th place, and a good session for Luca Engsler in 10th, 6/10ths covering the top 10. Front Pereira standing in once again this weekend for Christian Engelhardt was 11th, Max Powell 12th, was pretty busy, we didn't see much of him, but he did a lot of laps in that session. Thierry Vermeulen 13th, Nicky Tim 14th, Ricardo Feller back in 15th, René Rast and Sheldon van der Linde and Marco Wittmann, then the Schubert BMW drivers, back in 16th, 17th and 18th, ahead of the McLarens of Ben Durr, and Clement Schmidt only did 14 laps in the session. So that's the first free practice session complete, 55 minutes long. The slightly shorter session to come this afternoon is scheduled to get underway at 3:30 p.m. local time, and we've had a revised timetable, but it is still scheduled for 3:30 p.m. So there, Kelvin van der Linde, a good start to the weekend in the wet, 3rd quickest for the championship leader. Mirko Bortolotti, though, as he's been all year long, was just over his shoulder, 4th quickest in the session, 7 points between the top 2 in the championship, with the 2 qualifying sessions and 2 races to come tomorrow, and then Hockenheim in a few weeks' time. So Lucas Auer, then, the fastest driver in the session in very wet conditions. This is his on-board lap to round out our coverage of free practice 1 here from Spielberg, from Brian Oliver and me, Chris Hartley. That just about wraps up the session, but we'll be on air at 3:25, hopefully, if there's no further weather delays, to talk you through the build-up and then the session for 45 minutes of free practice 2 this afternoon. Potentially less wet conditions here at the Red Bull Ring. So Lucas Auer takes you on a lap around the Red Bull Ring. That was him coming out of turn 3 in the wet conditions, heading slightly downhill, then up towards turn 4. Over a crest, and then you, as I say, go downhill slightly into the braking zone here, which is what caused 1 or 2 of the drivers, including René Rast and Maro Engel, to have an off at this turn and run through that gravel trap that you can see on the left side of the picture, down through turns 4, 5 and 6 into the left-hander at turn 6, which is normally 3rd gear in the drive, and about 130 kilometres an hour still. And then you continue to descend down here, and Mirko Bortolotti going off in this corner towards the end of the session as well. Through into sector 3 you go, through turns 7 and 8, the left and the right, which in the dry are very quick turns, taking at between 150 and 180 kilometres an hour. And then the downhill run through the final 2 turns at turns 9 and 10, where all the track limits warnings tend to come. Pretty much 90-degree right-handers. You can see how the circuit falls away there and sucks you towards the outside onto the curbs, ease off, and then go through in the dry this corner at about 140 kilometres an hour, less so in the wet, to complete a flying lap for Lucas Auer here at the Red Bull Ring. So he is the driver that ends the first session here at the Red Bull Ring quickest. We'll see how he gets on in free practice 2. That's it from Brian Oliver and me, Chris Hartley. Thanks for watching. Speak to you again this afternoon for free practice 2.